Jesus said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been raised, I will go before you in Galilee. So Jesus is telling the disciples today, or at that moment, that they're going to be scattered. They're going to stumble, which means, translated in King James Version, to scattered. To scatter abroad, to disperse, to spread wide around amongst an area. So Jesus is giving them basically a warning to say, hey, heads up, guys. So when this happens, you guys are going to disperse. You guys are going to break apart. All of you are going to make your own personal decisions. But yet, when this takes place, you will be scattered. This is going to happen. Going on verse 3, and it says, Peter answered and said to him, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. Jesus said to him, assuredly I say to you that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter said to him, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And so said all the disciples. See, Peter was speaking ahead before he even knew what was going on. Peter was speaking out of emotion. Peter was not knowing what he was talking about, but he, in his heart, him in his place where he was at, he was saying, Lord, no matter what, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to go through this with you, no matter what it takes. Even if it kills me, Lord, I am there to you till death do us part. And Jesus is like, bro, Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. Before this night, you're going to deny me 3 times before the sound of the rooster. But in Peter's confidence in himself, he's telling the Lord, I'm there with you till the end. I won't back down. I won't change my direction. I won't change my course. Peter had no idea what Jesus was about to face, but insisted that nothing will make him stumble. We should learn a valuable lesson from Peter this morning. That we ourselves should be careful not to puff ourselves up, but leaving the raising up for God. Because sometimes we could puff ourselves up more than what we think. And we raise ourselves up to a standard thinking, that we're all that. And like my pastor used to say, that our farts don't stink. We think ourselves of that for some times. And we have to realize, you know what? We're not there because we put ourselves there. We're there because God put us there. And see, Peter was not understanding this. And even though Peter was one of the disciples, he still did not have clear understanding of what it was needed. As far as Jesus and his purpose, he did not have that clear understanding of everything that needed to take place. So therefore, Peter, in that moment, was speaking in the flesh. He was taking that opportunity, trying to get the boys in the same mentality, in the same heart, saying, you know what, no matter what, we're not going to leave you behind. But we have to remember that over time, Jesus continued to teach them and continued to minister to them, saying that this needed to take place, that this needed to happen. He didn't tell them that you alone are going to be crucified with me, maybe in the flesh, but not in the physical, just as Jesus was saying that it was going to be done to him. See, Peter did not have this understanding. So therefore, he was speaking out of his heart. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 1, it says, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what the day may bring forth. Do not boast about tomorrow, because tomorrow is not even promised. It's what we do today is what matters. What opportunities do we have today? Are we taking advantage of those opportunities to be a witness? Are we taking advantage of those opportunities today to be Christian-like, to be one that people can look at and say, you know what, that's a true Christian. That's a true disciple of God. That's a true believer because they say what they do in open doors and behind closed doors. See, we have to know that tomorrow is not here. We don't know what's going to take place. We could be planning for a big event, for something that's going to take place, and we could be putting all the hype and all the work into it, but yet, because we get so involved in that, we sometimes can neglect everything else that comes before it. And we tell people, and we're like, you know what, I don't have time right now. I'm busy right now. It has to wait till tomorrow. I'll give you a call tomorrow. Tomorrow. What if something happens to that person the next day? Where's that guilt going to fall on? I know if I had a heart, I would feel that guilt. I knew if it was me, I would feel that shame, like, man, I missed an opportunity. See, we can't say that we're something if we're not taking upon our duties to do it. We can't say we're a leader. We can't say that we're a minister. We can't say that I'm a believer in this and that if we're not doing our duties daily. Because it's an everyday thing. It's an everyday work that we have to carry with us. It's not something that we could put on and put back off whenever we please. It's a 24/7 thing. God allows us to sleep, though. He knows that we're in this flesh, and if we don't get sleep, guess what? We cranky. We definitely ain't good to no one, even to him, because we're going to refuse to even help him, right? If you don't get sleep and God's speaking to you, are you really going to say, okay, Lord, your will, not mine? Let's be real. This is why in the duty of doing his services, he gives us that rest that we need. He truly does, because he knows how we work. He knows how we function. But Peter had no idea why this was taking place, but yet he was speaking ahead. Going on verse 36, it says, and then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane. I always say it differently. And he said to his disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. And he took with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. Jesus is saying that he is feeling sorrowful, which is meaning he was surrounded with grief, severely grieved. He was sad. Imagine this. Imagine that I'm sure some of us have been, or maybe not. Imagine that you have to turn yourself in. How did it feel that you only had a couple of days to party? How did it feel that you weren't going to see your family for a couple months, maybe a couple years? How did it feel knowing that you were going to have to go to this doom and turn yourself in and you have limited contact? How did it feel when you had COVID, right? And you had to isolate yourself from your family. And you had no choice but to do so for their well-being. How did it feel then to be isolated? How did it feel when you know that you're going to go into a circumstance where it's going to take you away because it's only going to affect you and no one else? Same thing, Jesus was feeling sorrowful. He was feeling grieved because he knew that this was going to take him somewhere else. Somewhere that he did not desire, but somewhere that he was willing to give in and give up to. He was willing to be sacrificed. He was willing to be turned in. But yet this was Jesus in the flesh. So Jesus was going through some things. And if you notice, he took people with him. He didn't go in this himself. He didn't go into this alone. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, in the flesh. He took with him 3 disciples. Why he went to go pray? Because he needed companionship. He needed someone there, other believers, to be there with him while he was going through the hardest trial of his life. The hardest trial of his life. And he needed companionship, meaning a fellowship or a friendship. He needed this. And see, this is what we also need at times. But sometimes we're too stubborn to even acknowledge it. When we're going through something, we need that fellowship. We need that companionship. We need that friendship. Not the friendship that's someone that's going to come there and pat you on the back and tell you, oh, you're going to be okay. The friendship that's going to bring in a good word for you. A friendship that's going to bring in a word that's going to give you confirmation to help you stand for that same day. Heck, alone to help you for the rest of the week. There's people in here that send us messages, me and my wife together and even apart. And if you've done that, I want you to know how much of an impact that has made. That made so much impact that it helps me to face the next week. But you didn't know that until today. See, the thing is, it doesn't matter how much impact you think it's going to make. It's whether you're being obedient into giving that word, that encouragement. Because we all need that friendship. We all need that companionship. And sometimes we don't want to hear it, right? We don't want to hear it. We want to fight. We want to say, I don't want to listen to this and that, until we're down to the very, very ground and we're like, I'll take your word. Help pick me up now. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of bickering. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of that. Then the true friends come around. And then they speak to you and tell you like it is. Because it's only at that time that we're ready to accept it. It's only at that time we're tired of fighting the flesh. We're like, man, I'll take it now. I'll take whatever I can get. And Jesus took them with him. And he was being open, and he was even telling them that his soul was exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. Watch with me. Be with me. In verse 39, it says, he went a little farther and fell on his face and prayed, saying, Oh, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. The cup is meaning in the New Testament, the cup of sorrow, meaning the bitter lot which awaited the Lord in his sufferings and death. So the Lord exactly knew what he was praying for. Jesus, at this point of needing to make a decision, either to follow through or fall back and walk away and say, Lord, just take me back. He had that choice. Just like today, we have that choice. Today, we could always say, you know what, Lord, I'm tired of this. I'm going to fall back and give up. Jesus had the same choice. He was facing death. He was facing circumstances far more than what we have faced even up to today. And he could have just said, Lord, take me back. And he could have just went in a snap of a finger. Today, if we even try to go back, most of the time we regret it later. And we're like, man, Lord, forgive me for even trying to go back because I don't even belong back over there. Heck, I'm not even comfortable most days, let alone I'm back to the grouchy old me. Let alone I'm starting to dislike people again. Again, I'm starting to feel angry again. I'm starting to feel bitter again. I'm starting to feel all these things that I never felt before. Yeah, it's because you decided to step away from the Father's will. And you decided to step into your own will, into your own desires. And sometimes we like to point the finger at everyone else, but we don't look at the reflection in the mirror and say, you know what? It's me. It's a me issue. It's not a mom. It's not a dad. It's not a brother. It's not a sister, but it's a me issue. And that's where it begins. That's where the work begins because we acknowledge that it's us. We acknowledge that it's us, and when we acknowledge it's us, then we're like, God, help me because I need a change. Because sometimes we pray people out of our lives. Man, Lord, sister so-and-so is getting on my nerves. Tell her to leave me alone. And here she comes around the corner with her Bible in her hand or something, and she has that little evil look in her eye, right? And she's about to give you a word. God's like, oh, you want to pray them away? I'm going to send them back your way. And I'm going to give you a word on top of that. How about that? And it's going to bother you, and it's going to rub you the wrong way. And the funny thing is, we can't do nothing about it except for complain. Except instead of fighting our pride and saying, you know what, Lord, I accept. I'll take it. I'll acknowledge it. Verse 40 goes on to say, then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me for an hour? For 1 hour? Watch and pray lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is what? Weak. The flesh is weak. The flesh is temporary. This is why Jesus continues to always talk about the flesh and the spirit. He's trying to tell us something here. Our flesh is temporary. The spirit is going to carry us into eternity forever and ever and ever. Let me see if I can find it. In Luke chapter 18, verse 1, Jesus is talking about always praying and not to lose hearts. Always praying and not to lose hearts. And the temptation that he's talking about is a state of trial in which God brings his people through adversity and affliction in order to encourage and prove their faith and confidence in him. Did you catch that? Temptation is something that we all go through. Everyone goes through it, okay? Everyone goes through a type of temptation. There's all kinds of it in which God brings his people through. Not to, through adversity, through affliction, through suffering, through pain, through loss, through whatever you're going through, in order to encourage and prove their faith and confidence in him. Why? Because you can't do it alone. This is where we have to acknowledge we can't do it ourselves. But our confidence is in who? Christ Jesus. And this is why he continues to tell us through his word. This is why he continues to just tell his disciples to be ready, to know what's going to happen, to know what's needing to take place. It says 42 says, again, a second time he went away and prayed, saying, "O my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done." And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. So he left them, went away again, and he prayed a third time, saying the same words. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand." See, that's the problem with this. That's the problem with the flesh. That's the problem with the flesh. Jesus took his disciples and they were sleeping each and every single time. They fell asleep. And yet he's there, do you still need more rest? I don't know whether Jesus was being sarcastic or if he was understanding like they were sleeping through the traveling or whatnot. But 3 different times Jesus goes back to them while he's going and seeking the Father. And he noticed that Jesus went back on different occasions in that same time. He wanted to know that he knew. He wanted to know that if there was any other way, but he knew that there was no other way. And this is why he said, "Father, let it be your will and not mine." He didn't complain. He didn't say it was getting too hard. He said it in his words to the Father. See, when we go to the Father, when we go to God and we're saying, "God, these are the things that I'm facing," we got to be straight out with God. This is what it is. Don't try to butter it up because he already sees your hearts. Don't try to say, "Lord, I'm doing good," but Lord knows sometimes we're not even doing good. We're not even saying what we're doing. We're not even doing what we're even saying. We say one thing in church, but when we're somewhere else, we're doing something else. But have we went to God and said, "You know what, Lord, I made a mistake. I did something that I was not supposed to do." Because like Tupac said, all eyes on me. And there's a lot of eyes in Bakersfield. And you're bound to be seen by someone doing something that you're not supposed to. But God knows ultimately what we do and don't do. But see, he goes to the Father and he says, "Lord, If this cup can pass for me, then let it pass. But not my will, but your will. Lord, if whatever I'm going through today, if I have to go through this, Lord, then help me through this. Then help me through it. But if it's something that I could be avoided, Lord, well, help me get past it. Right? Hey, let's be honest. We want to get past it as quickly as possible because we don't like being stuck in a rut. We don't like being stuck in one place and having a struggle. That's not part of our fleshly desire. Our fleshly desire is to accomplish, is to succeed, is to be victorious. But when it comes to the flesh and being dealt with the flesh, man, Lord, I want a quick resolution, like the New Year resolution that I made. Lord, I promise this, and that. I want it to be that quick. I need a resolution, Lord, because that ball is dropping. I'm running out of time because we put God on a time limit. And when that time it doesn't hit in our time, guess what? We start looking for the alternate route. We start looking and saying, well, what looks more easier since God isn't moving that quick? God isn't moving as quickly as I expected. So therefore, if I take this route, it should complicate things less. And I have more time to wait on God. No, God sees the route that you're taking, and he's going to make you wait a little bit more longer so that you can still believe and trust in him. See, God knows our agendas. God knows our mindsets. Going on verse 47, it says, and while he was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, with a great multitude, with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him. Immediately he went up to Jesus and said, greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. But Jesus said to him, friend, why have you come? In other translation, it says, do what you have come to do. See, Jesus already knew what was taking place. The one thing that I've seen here is the way that even Judas, when he was getting ready to betray Jesus, Judas could have done it any other way, right? Think about this. If you're going to betray someone, then you don't care about them, right? You're going to say, hey, he's right here. Come get him. Get him. Hurry up before he gets away. You're just going to give up on him. You're going to rat them out. You're going to say, take him away before he sees me, whatever the case may be. But Judas, even though he was betraying, he still gave Jesus his respect. That's kind of strange to me. Judas still calling Jesus rabbi, which means teacher. And he's still paying him a certain respect, even though he's about to give him up to the cross. Right? Isn't that kind of weird? I know we all had some type of friends like that before. They say one thing in front of you, but guess what? You have several knives in your back. Yeah, we've been there, done that, right? Well, Judas was one of them back in those days. We thought they existed barely. We thought they existed when we were growing up. No, they existed back in Jesus' days. See right here, Judas was being a hypocrite. In Titus chapter 1, verse 16, it says, they profess to know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable, disobedient, and disqualified for every good work. See, this was one of the 12. This is one of the ones that Jesus was working with. This is one that was saying, I'll go with you wherever. And his work and in his livelihood and in his actions, it was totally not that. It was way totally different. And sometimes we look at the word hypocrite, and it's a hard word. It's a heavy word because we know when the word hypocrite is being used, you're calling someone out. You're calling them out by their actions. You're calling them out by who they really are. And that's a hard word. That's like in jail when you call someone a snitch, right? You don't do that. When you call someone a name, when you're in the streets, you don't call someone a punk. Guess what? Time to squab. I know old lingo words, right? Same thing in Christianity. You don't say you're a Christian and be yet being told you're a hypocrite. That's a heavy word. But if it's truth, then it hurts. But Jesus loved calling out the Pharisees and the Sadducees and calling them hypocrites. Called them for what they truly were. And this is exactly what Judas was. You know, at times we got to ask ourselves, even beforehand when I was back and forth in church, you know, how can we say that we know God when we act like the devil? When we act like the devil. Because the devil was sneaky too. The devil snuck around to do whatever he wanted to do, and then the next day, he was remembered. He was a worship angel. He took in everything. He had his own agenda, though, towards the end. How can we be one way and act like another? See, because the way I say that, too, is because there are others that are looking at the way that we act. There's others that are looking at the way that we behave, the way that we interact, the way that we live our lives out. And if our lives aren't according to the word, guess what? We're leading them astray. We're taking them a different direction that we don't even know by our own actions. And then we come to church saying, thank you, Lord, praise Jesus. I love you, I exalt you. But the week before that, we were acting like the devil himself. We were doing things that we should not even be doing at all. But we profess differently. Jesus, when he tells them to do what you have come to do, Jesus could have done anything that he wanted to. Remember, he flipped tables in the temple. He called out the Pharisees, he called out the Sadducees, called them hypocrites. So when Judas came and he gave him a kiss and he greeted Jesus, Jesus tells him, do what you have come to do. In all of this, Jesus kept his composure. He didn't give Judas a backhand. He didn't tell the disciples, beat Judas up, handle his business. He just said, you know what, come to do what you came to do. The one that calmed the wind, as it says in Mark chapter 4, Jesus that healed the man with leprosy, the one that casted out demons and performed many miracles, kept his composure at this time, knowing that he was going to be taken away to his death, to his crucifixion. He did not put up a fight. Jesus performing all these things, he knew what he was capable of doing. He knew he could have called down legions of angels to come and rescue him. He knew that he could have done anything in this world to our even imagination. But he still kept composure. He still stayed in character. Even today, we know what we ourselves are capable of if we were to be crossed, if we were to be pushed. We ourselves know what we are capable of doing ourselves. But just like Jesus did right here, we must remain and stay composed. Stay in character. Why? Because we should understand this is who we ought to be. This is how we ought to act. No matter how I'm being pressed, no matter how I'm being persecuted, even Jesus, when he was being given to the devil, when he was being given to those that were going to take him to be crucified, kept his composure. If he did that, that's the same Jesus that lives in me. So today, when I'm being pushed to my extremities, guess what? I got to keep my composure. I got to keep my cool. Why? Because I'm not running off my own power. I'm not running off my own understanding. It's God that's in me that's going to help me to sustain this. Going on verse 51. It goes on to say that when they came and laid hands on Jesus and took him, and suddenly one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword, struck the servant of the high priest, and cut off his ear. But Jesus said to him, put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Or do you think I cannot now pray to my Father that he will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels? How then could the scriptures be fulfilled that it